Next, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody to the regular monthly meeting of the board. Roll call.
6:33 sound okay?
Sounds good.
Archer?
Yes.
Carpenter?
Yes.
McElroy?
Yes.
Stottsbury?
Yes.
McKee?
Yes. Public participation.
There's none. What we're going to do to start off with admin reports for tonight, I've asked Philip, recently put out a survey to our families and students and staff about returning to school in the fall and kind of what they were looking for, what their wishes were. There were 5 total questions, I believe. Philip has done a fantastic job analyzing that, looking at that. So I'm just going to turn it over to Philip and let him cover a little bit of the survey information for you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so we sent this survey out through our Twitter, Facebook, through student emails, our website. And we asked a series of questions of what does return to school, what would you prefer? And so we're going to show you the percentages of this data. I mentioned to the staff that this isn't a random sampling. We received responses by people that saw the Twitter and saw the Facebook and saw the webpage and saw the email, and then also wanted to express their opinion. So it's not a random sampling like you'd see where you can extrapolate perfectly to the larger population. So the first was just, who are you? So our parents and guardians were, of course, the biggest group, and then followed by students and our school staff members. So in the upper right-hand corner on these slides, it's important to know who we're looking at, what group of people. So right now we're looking at all of the people. So later on, you'll see me break it out, staff versus students, parents. So the big question was, assuming that there were required safety measures in place, what is your preference for your students returning? You'll see just under 60% was all in-person, face-to-face, followed by that mix, and all distance learning is 12%. So that's all responses. That's including staff, students, and parents. So we were interested in how does that break out to the smaller groups. So the staff was a higher percentage. So you're looking at just under 70%, followed by a mix, and then very low number there at 3.9 for all distance. Same question, but with parent and student responses. So it matches the all response group pretty close, since it makes up the majority of the responses. So just under 60%, followed by that mix, and then all distance learning. So if you're interested in what these percentages mean number-wise, at least in this group of people, this is roughly 425 responses. So if you look at all distance learning and wanting to figure out what 13.3% is, just multiply that by 425, and that'll give you the exact number.
Philip, while you're there, You want to talk a little bit about our discussion about what we think the absence of responses among the large group might indicate, the fact that people that really wanted their voices heard really sought out opportunities to provide.
Yeah, when we were discussing, it's like, who did respond? And again, they knew about the survey, and then they wanted to turn around and voice their opinion and give their opinion. So we were discussing, why wouldn't someone not want to fill out the survey? Maybe they're okay with just, I'm going to just send my child back, just return to normal. So we believe and think that that's probably the case, that if you're not responding to us, one, you may not know about the survey. Two, it's just, you don't want to mark all distance learning because that's outside the norm. You're expecting the norm being, we're going to go back home, person face to face. And so then, if you do support blended or the distance learning, so we're removing the face-to-face and saying, if you do want to have distance or blended learning, you have the broadband capacity to support the live video stream. So we're going to be streaming our classes live. We'll follow the schedule. If your student is home, they're going to be expected to watch as the class is happening live. And so you may have a decent connection at home, but if you have 3 or 4 siblings, that decent connection may not withstand 3 or 4 different video streams at once. And we're working on solutions that would allow us to, we're going to be recording our classes. And we're looking at solutions where students could get these offline, grab these videos and watch them at home where they don't maybe have zero internet or limited internet. Of course, they would be on a delay. They wouldn't be watching it live, but they would be able to watch it at some point once they grab that file.
This is going to be every day?
Yeah.
So let me add just a second. So what was thrust upon us last March and how we responded to it, I really feel like our folks did a fantastic job with little time. We want to be very clear that that's not what remote learning looks like in the future. That was our best attempt given less than 24 hours notice. Moving ahead, our expectation is that we have to be much more interactive and engaging and have much higher expectations for the engagement between teacher and student, whether they're at home or here. So that ties in with a couple other decisions, but when we say remote learning, we're not talking about returning back to what we did last spring. We have to have learned from that and grown from that and be better as a result of the lessons we learned.
So, Pat, just a quick question. On that, how is that going to be, whether it's going to be 2 different lesson plans, or will that just be recorded lesson plan available for the students?
So if you're not available to access it live, it will be recorded so you can access it when it is to be. Because you know what? It may not be possible for that kid to tune in at third period, depending upon what their child care situation. But boy, if we've set aside as a family to sit down at 6 o'clock at night, I'll be able to access all that.
And we're doing what we can do internally to support this broadband concern. So if you look across the district and there's 60 to 70 teachers streaming at once, we're doubling our bandwidth here. We're putting in a brand new network which will handle simultaneous video streams coming, say, down the elementary hallway where you have a dozen teachers wanting to stream out and hitting record. So we're doing what we can. We're also meeting with EMA in about 2 weeks about placing community hotspots where maybe your home doesn't have sufficient broadband, or you're in that situation where you have too many children in the house to withstand that. So you can offline these videos onto your Chromebook, and we're sending devices home K through 12. So you can, instead of coming to us all the way into Sarahsville, we're looking at trying to place hotspots in our communities where you could go into a parking lot, get near the hotspot, mark the videos as offline, grab anything, any paperwork off Google Classroom, offline it. You can go back home, have zero internet, and still be able to watch those videos. So we're working on those kind of things. You know, we're even looking at maybe you're at home and maybe you don't have transportation to get to a hotspot. There's solutions to where videos could be dropped onto a USB drive and delivered bus route. You know, that's not, logistically, that could be a difficult situation depending on the number of students that would require that, but that is something that we could try to achieve. This is an all responses group, so if masks and shields are required for face-to-face, you can anticipate attending. So we said 67% versus 30% there. Everyone's comment on that?
1 to 3.
But you also need to look at, some have already said that they want a distance learning.
We're included in this number too.
Yeah.
So the staff was a much different look at, and I mentioned during the staff meeting, at 3.9% equates to 2 of the staff that responded. So the parent and student group was that 45. And this is a bus transportation question because that's so required for our riders, how we anticipate. So, and we didn't include staff, of course, in this question because they're typically not right. And that was it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Questions, Philip?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
You always wish that you had a greater response, but, you know, I think you can draw some conclusions about the people that choose not to. I think it's fairly accurate to think that they're hoping and wanting everything to have normal, as much normalcy as possible. So, you know, as we move forward and kind of talk about where we are today with our plans to return, I sent you guys an email as with the entire staff. I'll be meeting with the staff virtually at 9 o'clock in the morning. Understand this is not every detail. And what I've tried to share with the group was, let's come up with some concepts, let's come up with a framework, then let's start adding the detail to go with it. I can tell you that since I sent you this email, just in my commute from Columbus and back today, there's so much more detail already available. So I'll share some of that stuff as we go, but the plan for this is to be a living document that as we layer more detail to it, more specifics every day, then this plan will start to address many of the specifics to questions that may not appear to be there today, but certainly they're on our list to be solved. So when we met last Tuesday, you know, everybody wants to get into really the fine-tooth details. And what we said was we really can't establish those details until we know what the framework looks like. So, you know, I've told you that since March 12th of last year, we've told people it's been a fluid situation. Whether it's you're in a local school district or you're the athletic association wanting to know what fall looks like, it's fluid. New information comes out every day. And guess what? We're still in that world. We're still in that world. You know, if you got the notice last night that the governor's going to make an announcement at 5:30, everybody assumed that, right, that was going to be significant major changes. And what we heard was, listen, we really need to take advantage of the opportunity while we have it, or we could be returning to the days of March and April. So it's fluid, and just know that this plan is really outlining concepts that we will follow moving forward. We have identified, we continue to identify many issues and scenarios that we need to resolve. We have a list of those, and we're clicking them off very quickly. One example will be, you know, we have a few issues with the negotiated agreement and how we might meet those expectations in the model that we're proposing. And yesterday, we had a lot of ideas on the board. Today, I think we're really, really close to having that 100% resolved. So things happen fast. This document will continue to change with a lot more details that I think will answer a lot of those things. I think the first thing that we want you to know as an admin team, we're going to work collaboratively with folks, students, staff, and families. Both in our district, we're collaborating with people in other districts. We're really trying to work to support each other, but our three primary goals is we have to have a plan that returns people to an environment that's safe for both staff and students. I think that's first and foremost. We also realize that one size doesn't fit all. So we have to differentiate our opportunities that include face-to-face as well as remote instruction. And the thing that I really think that we want to make sure that we're capable of doing, we need to transition between the two as needed seamlessly. So an example of that would be, we're all here, we choose face-to-face, okay? But for whatever reason, my cohort or my pod needs to be quarantined. So I'm literally at school today and I'm home for 14 days tomorrow. I should not have to wait 14 more days to be instructed. I have to be able to move to that seamlessly and immediately. Is that easy? No. Have we ever done it before? No. Can it be done? Yes. That's going to require some work. We're going to get there. We're going to do that. We are going to ask people, if you designate remote, then we're going to ask you to do that and commit to that for a minimum of 9 weeks. However, understand fluid situations mean that families encounter fluid situations, job changes, childcare change, all these. So we have to be adaptable when the situation requires it. Our expectation is you commit to remote, you commit to doing it for 9 weeks. But we also understand there could be possible exceptions to that.
So if you do that, does the whole family stay? If, say, I want to come to school and Guy doesn't, we're in the same household?
Not necessarily. Are you talking about if you had a quarantine situation?
No, if
Choice?
he chooses,
No, because you could have a compromising health condition and your sibling may not. So they may feel comfortable them coming to school when you not. So that's really good. So we do have a process. I'm going to outline it, kind of what the beginning procedures are to designating if you choose remote and a timeline to do that if possible. And then we want to provide to the greatest extent possible in a face-to-face environment that reduces potential exposure to COVID-19. And also, if you're here face-to-face, we want to create a situation that if there is a need to quarantine, that number of students needing to be quarantined is small as possible. Yeah, I don't want one student in the 5th grade to get COVID and think that we have to send the whole 5th grade home. So we have to think about the safety and how we can move that group, how we can offer a quality education, a number of opportunities, and also minimize exposure. So that plan was kind of built. Our thoughts and concepts are kind of built around those 3 things. Let's talk about the required safety protocols as put out by the Department of Education and the Governor's Office. We need to be prepared to vigilantly assess for symptoms. I think it cannot be stated enough that we need individuals, students and families to share responsibility. They need to be vigilant in assessing for symptoms. We do not have the means currently to assess to the degree that we would like to. That's one of our things that Ms. Thompson's working on, is how we can do, and how do we respond to those things once they're on campus. But we really need families to understand, if your child is symptomatic or they have a fever, don't send them to school. So this would be an example that probably as soon as tomorrow, we're going to start layering some more details to this about what assessing for symptoms look like. We're going to educate people on what those symptoms are, how we would like for them to react to them, and also how we plan to react to them. Wash and sanitize hands frequently. I we can't be reminded enough. Hand washing is one of the primary keys. We will have hand sanitizing stations available in each classroom and in all of our common areas. Deep clean and sanitize high-touch surfaces each day before and after class, recess, etc. We're going to actually empower, that's not just going to be the custodian's job. We really think that what we have to do is teach our students some personal responsibility. We're going to provide the material. We're going to provide the spray bottles. We're going to, you know what? If you're leaving to go to another class, wipe your desktop down before you leave. If you're a student coming into this classroom, wipe the desktop down before you sit down. Those are gonna, it's gonna be a different world, but we believe in working with our supplier that we're gonna have the equipment available to do that. At night, really our custodians, I think, have been doing a fantastic job. When we use this area, before we use it, or after we are done, they're taking care of that. It's going to be very much the same. We need to have social and physical distancing to the greatest extent possible. And then when you're not able to maintain that distancing, we need to have the personal responsibility to wear a mask. And then the fifth requirement is each district has to implement a face coverings or mask policy. And you have a draft of one that I'll share with you later. That's one of the first that was drafted by Pepple and Wagner, our attorneys. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but the bottom line is we have multiple people to protect. So for example, pre-K through 2 are exempt from the mask policy. However, I still think it's important that pre-K through 2 ought to have a mask, and they ought to be taught that, when we can't be in proper distance, or we have to line up and go to the bathroom, or we're going to have we need to know that it is appropriate, it is good safety precautions to wear a mask and help protect our staff. And so we have an obligation not only to keep our students safe, but also our employees and staff. So with that, here's a couple of things that we plan on doing. You have the face-to-face or remote learning option. We're asking families, if you're interested in remote learning, to contact Danielle Davis at the administration office ASAP. We're putting this out on an all-call. We'd like for them to indicate their preference as soon as possible, but hopefully by August 1, 2020, if possible. The reason Danielle is the point of contact right now, we still don't have staff in our buildings all the time, and we just don't want people to be missed. So what we're going to provide students and families that may be interested or possibly want to know, should I choose face-to-face or remote? We want to be able to set up meetings and opportunities to talk with the family and try to decide truly what best option that will be for their family. We can check out all those internet issues that we have, and we can really sit down and kind of orientate them to what that may look like. As a result of so much change and how the buildings will actually operate differently, we are recommending that face-to-face learning for Nova local school districts begin after Labor Day on Tuesday, September 8, 2020. Staff will still report as scheduled on August 12th. And the primary, if you look at these numbers and you say, well, 30%, again, 30% of these respondents, but if you did want to prepare for worst case scenario, 30% of the larger group is choosing an option other than face-to-face. If we really want to be better, if we really want to provide a better remote learning experience, that's going to require some additional time and training for our staff. We really think that delay in start will be advantageous. We've actually seen that in the past where staff worked a couple of weeks before students arriving, and it was fantastic then, and certainly with this situation, it'll benefit us moving forward. How we're going to try to minimize exposure with kids here at school. Here at the high school, the good news is there's only 240 kids that are typically here during a given time. They're going to operate on what's called an AB schedule. So what that means, instead of having 8 periods in a day, they're going to have 4. Okay, so on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week, I'm going to attend periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. But instead of 42 minutes, they're going to be, let's say, 84 minutes. So that limits the number of transitions they need to make in a given day. The next day they come back, they do 2, 4, 6, and 8. So this week, I might have odd number periods Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and even number Tuesday and Thursday, and then next week it flip-flops. I can tell you that there's a lot of people that do that for different reasons pre-COVID. It's not a bad way to schedule. Since this document was drafted and our work continues every day, we actually believe that our middle school students are going to be best served through an AB schedule too. So those details will be coming to you and the reasons why this document will grow and change daily. At the elementary school, including our middle school. We want to organize kids into pods or cohorts that will remain to the greatest extent possible the same throughout the day. So rather than 100 kids having 10 different options, because of the safety needs and trying to limit it and minimize that exposure, we're going to put you, and I'm just going to say, depending, the group size may change for whatever reason, but I'm with these 20 kids, and to the greatest extent possible, we attend the same classes during that given day. So if Guy is in my pod or cohort and he becomes sick or ill, I don't have to quarantine the whole building. I would likely only need to quarantine that pod. So it's going to help us reduce that number and not shut down the whole system. Any questions on that?
Will all kids be in pods?
And as much as possible, we're going to rotate the teacher to the classroom rather than the kids having mass class changes.
How does that impact preschool?
Preschool is a completely different animal because currently, because of COVID, they're restricted right now on a 9 student per 1 teacher ratio. So Kathy and the ESC have been having doing some great work. That number can double as long as you create dividers. So they're working through that right now, but they'll look a little different. But they too will be in pods. They're kind of already in pods to a certain extent.
Yeah, but I mean, all kids in a room are going to.
Yeah.
I got a question on that, going like to 84 minutes, you said, I know you shared that a couple years ago, studies done that students have a tendency, or even adults have a tendency to lose interest after about 35 minutes. Do we have any concerns with that, or?
Part of the training is teaching in a block. So kind of getting off topic, but this is what I love about my job. The period of time is not what matters if you're successful or not successful. It's how you use that period of time. So, math is a great example. Some people say, well, I need 90 minutes of math through the whole year to get a kid through algebra. But we look around every school and the majority get that done in 42 minutes. Okay, so how do you organize that period of time? So how do you use that last 40 minutes? Is it a homework session? Is it, what's that look like? So part of that training will be now, everybody's going to have an opportunity to teach the block. So at the middle school, it's always been English and math. Well, now we're going to have to provide that training for everybody because it is different how you use that time. If you set kids in a desk and you lecture to them for 80 to 90 minutes, that's not going to be successful. Typically what happens, just to be blunt about it, your highly engaging teachers, the people that knock it out of the park, you give them twice as much time, they knock it even further out of the park. If you have someone that struggles with a 42-minute period, 90 minutes is definitely challenging too. But the reason for the need for this is we have to minimize the number of class changes and the mobility through the building. Breakfast and lunch. Breakfast in both buildings will be provided in the first period class on kind of a grab and go basis, so kids don't have to herd and mass into the cafeteria to get breakfast. We used to do that at the elementary and middle school pretty consistently. School lunches, the likelihood is here with only 240 kids in the building, instead of having 2 lunches, they will go to 4 lunch periods, and that number will be manageable in the cafeteria. In the elementary and middle school, this looks completely different because you have 900 kids in a very small cafeteria. So how do you provide lunch? One of my greatest concerns, and we've talked about a few issues with the negotiated agreement, was how does this impact teachers' lunch? When do teachers eat? If I'm going to be here in this classroom with my pod, who's supervising? Because typically what you do for lunch, you put 150 kids in the cafeteria. These teachers go have lunch while these 2 or 3 people provide supervision. Well, we don't want to bring them together in a large group. So the best place for them is to stay in their classroom and have their lunch. So Marcy's been fantastic. Philip's been fantastic. Our principals have been working. Teachers have been creating ideas. So what we think that we can do in a schedule change. So imagine how hard we've worked to get the schedule for traditional, and now we're saying, oh, now we got to come up with something completely different. So what it's looking like today is the straight A-B schedule, kids eating in the cafeteria, 4 lunches instead of 2 at the high school. At the middle school, it looks like. You're hearing this before, I mean, some of these discussions happened at 4 o'clock today. We're thinking that in 5 through 8, we're going to need staff members to have that lunch with their pod, but we also think that we can create a second planning time for them to make up for the 30 minutes that was lost there. We think that's going to be fantastic. K4, still working on that a little bit. Obviously, we want to be able to provide them lunch and plan, but what I think is going to work, if we have 5 through 8 covered in classrooms, then that frees up our cafeteria during the whole lunch cycle, that we can still have K4 go to the cafeteria, and probably a whole grade level at a time, we think that we can distance appropriately in there. So that's kind of where we're angling now. So I can tell you that yesterday that was a big concern, like how we're going to jump the elementary lunch hurdle. Today, I think we have a solution for that. Now, we're going to be meeting and continuing to meet regularly. So again, this is going to change, but the staff that was involved in meetings yesterday thought that was going to be a big problem. Maybe some are listening tonight, maybe not, but tomorrow we think we have some solutions. So we think that we can overcome that. We can really create some unique things. And that's the thing. Whether we want to, I'm just going to say it this way, education's somewhat broken before COVID. I mean, let's just face it, education doesn't look drastically different for a long time than it did when we were in school. And it needs to change. This has really forced some change, and for us to look at that, we really have an opportunity to come out of this stronger and better. Like, I don't look at some of this as, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. There's going to be some changes that happen from this that really needed to happen pre-COVID. We're being forced to look at things differently, how we reach kids and families differently. This doesn't have to be negative. Philip's insight, our STEM designation, the way we're looking at things, so different. And we have some conversations that you wonder, can you ever make that happen? And then when all of a sudden your hand is forced to think about something differently, you think, well, shoot, this is going to kind of necessitate us doing that. And quite frankly, it's going to expedite us getting there sooner than we may have ever gotten there before. So some good things can happen. I think it's a positive. Bus transportation will be provided, but absolutely, if you want to ride the bus, you're going to wear a mask. And we think that's critical for a number of reasons. We have some ways, like it's been encouraged for us that first one on the bus, if possible, takes the back seat. You fill from back to front, so you don't have a lot of people passing each other and a lot of people on top of each other. It's also not feasible for us to run different bus shifts to limit the number of kids on the bus. So if we're able to require masks on the bus, then we can continue to run the routes as we always have and bring all of our kids to school like we always have. So we really think that's going to be important. The other thing is,
Are we going to have the mask on the bus?
I'm going to have a mask for every kid. I'm going to share that with you. So the other thing is, our staff is important. We need to make sure that we take care of our staff, whether it's teachers, custodians, bus drivers. So every kid getting on that bus is right face to face with that driver. And we want to make sure that we're doing our best to take care of them. We're on that bus for an extended period of time. Oftentimes the windows are shut, kids are on top of each other. We just feel like it's going to be critical to wear masks while riding school buses. Devices will be available for use by each child in grades K through 12. And we reacted to this year. We allowed every kid to have a device at home if they needed it. And we're going to also recommend that we permit those kids to take them home. Because again, it could be that situation where I'm at school today and I'm not tomorrow. We want that transition and that access to be seamless. Phil, I thought we had good success with that. Minimal damage that you're aware of? So, again, providing that access, I think is going to be key. It's possible, that a student that's here at school, and they all have access to a device, they can do what Philip said, they can download content, forget about COVID for a moment. If I know that I'm going to be out tomorrow for some reason, I can still access the information that I was going to get in. I don't have to wait and come back and get my assignment the following day. I might be able to take it with me. And I might be able to stay right up. I may not experience a loss because of my absence. So I think it's going to change the way that we look at snow days. I think it's going to change the way we look at both staff and student absences. I just think there's a whole lot of potential that could happen. Again, number 8 talks about the seamless transition from face-to-face to remote learning. I have not looked at it yet, but I already have a memorandum of understanding with the teachers about, how those recordings are managed and how we tape record and how the video works. And I want to say to you again, I've assured our teachers, we don't want video there as a gotcha. We want video there as a resource to support our kids and our families in their learning, especially those that happen to be doing it at home. So I've not read that yet. I got that this evening. So again, that's going to be one of those details. So tonight you have the first draft of a mask or a face coverings policy that's required. We hope to have your approval on a policy as we work through it. It's not something that we're looking to approve tonight. But right now, these are some of the guidelines that we're thinking. Masks are to be worn when riding school buses. Staff are required to wear masks or face coverings unless specified otherwise. So we do plan on making available to both our staff and students both a washable mask and also a transparent face shield. And I think that's going to give some flexibility, and I think a lot of people are going to prefer the shield when it's appropriate. We're going to ask all students and staff that, when physical or social distancing is not possible, please make sure that there's some type of barrier in place, mask or face shield. And I think that goes back to, we've had a lot of good conversation, what we could teach our students through this time about just personal responsibility. And you know what? Maybe I don't agree with it. Maybe I think masks are ridiculous. That's okay. But you know what? How about our responsibility to make other people comfortable? And how about, I don't know all the science behind it. Maybe I don't agree with it, but you know what? I want him to feel comfortable. And I think we have to put those things in place. I think we have to keep in mind that we have an obligation to the greatest extent possible to protect our staff and students, provide a healthy environment. So I think that's where we're starting. You will notice in the policy that there are a number of reasons and exemptions for not wearing a mask, which is going to be addressed more specifically in that policy. You'll have a chance to look at that a little bit later. So I just don't want people to think that we don't understand and realize there are exemptions. They are. The policy will address that, and we will deal with that as we're guided to do. Any questions on any of that so far? Concerns? Something you're adamant?
Each kid will get one mask and one face shield, both?
Yes.
One of them will get.
No, each. Again, we're trying to meet people where they are. And you think about, I also mentioned barrier. If I'm used to working with a small reading group, maybe I bring 3 or 4 kids up to the table at a time, let's say in a second or third grade. There's also some pretty neat barriers that can be, plexiglass barriers that can be put in a reading table that provides 4 dividers. To me, in that situation, that would serve the same purpose. So we're trying to meet people where they are. We're trying to differentiate because not everybody's coming at us with the same number, the same needs or the same number of concerns. So we want to provide as much flexibility as possible. So giving them one or the other, we'll do that. So I guess I would ask this question. We feel pretty confident that the skeleton, the framework of this plan addresses what we're hearing from our community. And I would ask, do you agree that that differentiated approach is addressing that?
Well, yeah.
I think it'll work.
I think you're gonna find out those, even the younger ones that aren't required, they'll adapt to these masks probably better than.
We're working on it. I mean, it's just, we're gonna start back, you can't touch your face, I mean, I'm terrible. But, I mean, we're working on it.
I am too.
I'm terrible. As much as I touch my kids back.
It might be a good idea to take the last month with a parent and maybe start practicing.
Yeah, we are.
The mask, because I wear it all day. It is horrible, but.
Mrs. Blackstone was part of our meeting on Tuesday, and, you know, fantastic comments, and, you know, our staff was fantastic on Tuesday. Let me tell you, we have a quality group. Couldn't have been happier with their contribution. One of the things, I want my kids to love school.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm gonna have to start practicing, and I'm gonna start having to put the right spin on it. Because quite honestly, I think kids are easy to adapt as long as the adults provide them the support to do so. And so she really brought up some good points about that. And, we need to embrace it as an opportunity and personal responsibility rather than punitive. So that's, I'm going to echo some things. Constance, I have to get better at the mask. I'm horrible. Like I want to mess with it. I want to do all this stuff. Well, I go back to, we used to take seniors for an etiquette luncheon at the Blennerhassett Hotel. And everybody thinks etiquette is what do I do with this fork and what do I do with this spoon. But the number one rule in etiquette, make those around you feel comfortable. So you know what? It's okay for me to be temporarily uncomfortable if I'm helping you gain comfort. And I think that's a good message right there, because I may have one opinion about masks, but I may be in a group with 12. Well, I know one thing, my wearing a mask is not going to impact someone negatively. It can only be a positive. So why wouldn't we want to put that spin that we have great kids, we have great families. Why don't we think, you know what, if nothing else, I'm going to do this to make those people around me feel comfortable. So we'll continue to provide updates, modifications. We're working. I tell you what, I've said this we have a great team. All the way down from our leadership team to our teachers, they're all leaders. Philip's been amazing as usual, and Marcy has absolutely worked nonstop. And we're trying now. We've got feedback coming from, you can imagine, numerous directions and how you balance all that. But I really think it's coming together. Actually, the last 24 hours, what looked like maybe some barriers that may not be able to be overcome. Now I think we've got something that looks fantastic, and probably a lot of concepts we want to keep long after we're beyond COVID. That's all I have. Philip, anything to add? You've had to painfully sit through all this dialogue.
Now, and just to reiterate the one point you made is we're sending all these devices home, so that way we can change on the fly if needed. Say you're in a pod that gets quarantined. That class can immediately switch over from face-to-face to remote. So it provides a lot of flexibility. So we're approaching it as, if we had to go remote across the board, that's what we need to stand up to. If we can do any other option that we're actually above. So I think we're in a good spot with all the tools that we're giving our teachers, the infrastructure that we're putting in place to handle this. And like I said, we're looking at alternatives for our families. This isn't a Noble County thing, this is a nationwide thing. Limited broadband capacity.
If you don't get attendance, does that?
That's a great question. No, so to address Kevin's question, spot on. Like, again, I think this is a game changer. So if I'm quarantined, let's say that I'm just going to pick fourth grade. as a teacher in this fourth grade pod, I'm quarantined and so are my 20 students. But I don't feel bad. I have to be quarantined for, well, if I go home and continue to work with my kids that are quarantined, has anybody missed anything? Yeah, I'd say it's a complete different way of looking at attendance. I will tell you there's guidance out there on it. I'll give you more details, but my thoughts are, hey, this shouldn't be that there's this drastic difference between face-to-face and remote. This should be seamless, and hey, this is not forever. This is for a temporary period of time. And if we're meeting the criteria that we set forth for remote learning, both on the staff side and the student side, then I'd say we haven't missed a beat.
I just did know, if they're on virtually, say Philip could go on there and say, hey, Constance's on today, she may not go home until 4:00 in the afternoon, but she got home, so
Yep.
does she count as being in school?
I say yes.
Okay.
Now, again, we have to make, Kevin, we have to make some policy adjustments, but I think the answer is absolutely yes.
Are we putting that, I guess generally speaking, that accountability back on our teachers who,
Yeah, so,
because you can get down on, I mean, we saw the initial,
so quite on, going back to the comment I made, remote learning is not what we did last spring. It needs to be better than that, and that goes back to that piece. So if we were to be full remote, if we were to have to go for whatever reason to full remote, we plan on our staff working from school. For a couple of reasons. They have internet issues too.
Yeah.
They need the capacity that we have here and the availability that we have here. And you know what? Maybe somebody might need to get to the school to access them for something. So our plan, if we went full remote, would be to have our staff here. And then one of the greatest barriers we saw with that was with childcare for our staff. And so we were working on solutions for that. Because the opportunity, the chance is out there that sometime you might be returned to full remote, and we need to have a plan for that. So we think this time that we have in August to train our staff will really serve us well in a number of different scenarios.
One of these devices that they're taking home, are they taking those home every night? And then when they come back in the morning, I'm sure they're going through a wipe down session, especially the younger kids. They're going to go through that.
Yeah, but that's another, that's a great point too. All these little things. Well, we told our kids on March 12th last year, take everything you're going to need. But you know what? Here's the thing. We thought we were going to be back. You just kept thinking. You never visualized. So if nothing else, pack your hood shoe. Make sure when you leave here today. I mean, what happens if you get a call and say, hey, by the way, you're going to be quarantined? Well, you ought to have everything necessary to keep going. It's a huge change in expectation. It's a huge change in preparedness. But I feel like we're able to do it. I think it's going to be different. It's not going to, be as we know it, but our staff's up for the challenge. We'll be good. Any other questions?
Like, plan.
I think we're on the right track.
I think it's consistent with the fact that we understand that education is not one size fits all. We're trying to meet people that have a variety of needs, and we're trying to meet it in a variety of ways while also trying to be respectful, of our negotiated agreement, our teachers' time, our staff time, and what we're putting out there. So I think we're finding a good balance. Guy asked a question earlier today, how we might group the students. We haven't decided that yet, but the reality of it is it won't be as we've grouped them before. It's going to be more like, gee whiz, I have 37 eighth graders that start their day at the high school for ag. Well, right there is the beginning of a group. And so, it's kind of there's going to be some self-selection. Okay, so I'm reading the question. What are some of the plans being discussed for the teacher-student one-on-one interaction if a pod or student is quarantined? There was extremely minimal communication first remote learning session. Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And that's one of the topics that really we have to focus on. If I'm here today and we're gone tomorrow, there should not be a break in the action. So we should predetermine, and I think the communication was an issue in this one question where, there was some gaps in communication last year. It was not, I think, what any of us desired. I think we responded as well as anybody in the short term, but we also realized we got to do a whole lot of things differently. So one of the things that came out of this, and we knew that we had an issue with consistency. The pandemic magnified that, because what we found is kids from 3 different grade levels went home to mom and dad, and they had 6 different ways that they had to communicate with 12 different teachers. So one of the things we're going to do to improve communication, we're committed to Google Classroom as our video sourcing, and we're changing over our website and communication system to School Messenger, and we're going to try to handle everything through 2 platforms. We're not going to have Remind and Class Dojo and see, we're not going to have 47 different things. We're going to commit to Google Classroom, we're going to commit to School Messenger, we're going to train our staff extensively, and then what we're also planning is some either in-face or virtual class orientations, where if you're in a pod and Constance is my teacher, let's say there's 20 kids, she's going to contact families individually during this time, and we're going to say, hey, here's what you can expect. If your child misses school, this is how we're going to communicate. If they're here, this is what there's going to be a plan for scenarios, and then parents and grandparents and caregivers are going to have the opportunity to be trained on, here's how you access Google Classroom. Not 14 different things, not Zoom, not Google Classroom, not Meets, not Teams, not all those things. This is our go-to, Google Classroom, School Messenger. So another good thing that came out of this is it forced us to address a problem that we knew existed. And now let me tell you why that problem existed. We didn't have, for a long time, we didn't support our staff with the resources to do that. So staff on their own oftentimes created their own solutions. I mean, praise our staff for doing that. But what happened is, if Kevin was the first grade teacher and he created this solution, and I created another one in 2nd grade, and Guy created another one in 3rd grade, parents just became detached and frustrated. So I think the answer to the question would be, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to start it with pods, 1 teacher assigned. We're going to talk about the expectations, how we're going to communicate, what we're going to use for video, and then we're going to really work to establish a better, really just better dialogue with our parents. So did that answer the question? You can chat me back. The next question is, do you know how you're going to maintain distancing within the classroom? Are there going to be smaller groups than just single classroom? We're working through those groups, and that's a great question. Every classroom literally will look different. So when we had this discussion the other day, we don't have a uniform classroom. We don't have the same desks. Some classrooms have tables, some have desks, some have flexible seating. So literally, we've began the discussions by saying each teacher will have the ability in their classroom to create as much distance as possible. So one example would be, one of my favorite classrooms to visit in the entire school district has a couch, has a love seat. It's fantastic for kids. Probably not a great time to keep the couch. This is probably one of those moments where it doesn't support distancing, and by removing that, I've created the opportunity for more space. So it may not be a specific enough answer, but the reality of it is each classroom is going to require different modifications. So we're going to do our best to provide that distancing, and then we're going to try to do the best possible at coaching our kids when that distancing is not possible, wear a mask. So one question back in response. The gentleman said, yes, it did answer for the most part, as long as there's accountability at the teacher level to allot office hours for questions out. I agree, absolutely. And we, thanks for asking the question. our primary concern when we broke last year was to maintain communication and support of our kids. It really didn't start off because it was so unexpected. It was traumatic for a lot of people. So we just wanted to make sure that we really tried to make ourselves accessible and we maintained communication. And the expectation, quite honestly, for learning was fairly minimal. We talked about one quality assignment per subject per week. And then I think you add all those consistencies together, it really kind of created a perfect storm. So we certainly expect and hope to improve on all those things. And to answer the question one more time, I've made this statement. If we aren't better at remote learning than we were last spring, we ought to all be looking for a different career. So I guess that accountability starts with me, and I've painted the expectation that what we did last spring, though I think was pretty good, the situation we're thrust upon, that's not going to be good enough moving forward because now we have had time to prepare. We've had time to learn lessons. We've had time to put things in place to fill those gaps. Other questions? Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Philip.
Anything else?
All right, is that it?
That's all I have.
All right, moving on to the treasurer's report. Trenda?
Okay, we have the minutes of the last meeting.
Questions, comments? Motion?
Motion.
Archer?
Second.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Salisbury,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes.
Financial reports. I'll just add a comment that we are closed for our fiscal year. Woo-hoo. Thank you, thank you.
I'm trying to squeeze some more stuff in.
I do want to apologize. I did not get the cafeteria report attached in time, and I didn't want to add it at the last second.
It's
So
okay, yeah.
I will give you double next month, I promise.
It's fine.
But the list of checks is there, and the, that year-end financial summary is, so that's a picture of the fiscal year. That's 12 months of activity for us there, so.
It really ain't too bad for what we've been through.
Right,
Yeah.
and I will say that we were, that fiscal year to date expenditure number, that 18 point, I guess it's really small up on your screen, sorry about that. Was within decimal places of what we, percentage-wise, of what we said on our forecast. So I was very pleased about that.
Any questions? Motion?
Motion.
Salisbury, second.
Second.
Perfect.
Salisbury?
Yeah.
Carpenter?
Yes.
Archer?
Yep.
McElroy?
Yes.
McKee?
Yes.
My donations, I see the attachment is missing.
Yeah. I was gonna
I didn't
say
say
something,
anything.
but-
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll bring that back to you next month. Sorry about that.
Can
So-
you just tell us what there was? Or do you know?
Yes, I'm there.
We had a donation from, for the cafeteria fund. Do you remember that amount, Dan, that Mr., was it Meek or Mock or,
Yeah, it was,
that was the name. I'll just have to bring it back to
it
you
was
guys.
for the summer feeding
It
program.
went
John Mock.
Mock, Do you remember the amount, Lorraine?
$2,500.
$2,500.
Good deal.
It was specified for someone.
Is it gonna go ahead and approve it? Or you wanna
I think
wait?
there was a couple others too.
Okay, you wanna wait?
We'll wait. I'll come back I'll bring that back next month.
We still get the money this month, right?
Yeah. Let's go on to 4.4, the certificate of total amount available and the balances. There's a copy of the certificate attached. So what happens is, after we close the fiscal year end, we say what our June 30th balances are. That's this column here. That's where we ended the fiscal year. These are the encumbrances that were outstanding at June 30th. So purchase orders, properly approved purchase orders were in place and reserved or encumbered those funds. And then carryover balance available then takes that cash balance and subtracts the encumbrances. Okay, so that's the net, the difference. And then the next column, the amount available from all sources, is what we expect our revenue to be for the year for each fund. And then the final is those two columns added together, your carryover plus your estimated receipts and the total. So there ends the total available for appropriation, which if you remember, we passed our temporary appropriations last month. And then in probably September-ish, we have to do it by October, but the last few years we've had a number for you by September. Anyway, September, October, we'll be bringing permanent appropriations to you.
I just have a general question.
Sure.
Cash balance for the junior high trip. What's that count?
So what's been happening is we have been waiting for and receiving slowly refunds from the various vendors that had already been paid for the trip that did not occur.
Okay.
So then what's going to happen is as soon as we have received everything that they say we're going to receive, there's still 2 rebates out there waiting to be received, or maybe 1. There may just be 1. Anyway, then we're going to start collecting information from the various families and calculating how much will be refunded based on. So there's some criteria in place there because fundraising money, has to stay with the group. But anything that was paid in by an individual will then be refunded to that individual.
Okay.
So.
Is there any thought to just taking another trip, having you put out like a survey, say, if there's even available to do so?
I've talked to Tori Thompson, was kind of in charge of the trip, and about several scenarios where they could actually just leave the money in hand, or follow the student to another grade level, or they could use it to pay their student fees, or they can use it to pay there's all kinds of scenarios out there that are possible, but kind of gonna leave it in their hands as to how they want to do that.
Any other questions? Motion? Motion. Carpenter, second.
Second.
Neckery.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Neckery,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
Stottsberry,
Yes.
Mickey.
Yes.
The last item on my section is a list of the blanket certificates that exceed our policy that we approved last month. If you remember, we approved the $30,000 blanket certificate policy, and I promised I would be bringing a list back. Well, this is the list. So these are blanket purchase orders that will be open for the entire fiscal year, and indicating who the vendor is, what the dollar amount is, and then in parentheses, I told you what the service was. So if you have any questions over any of that,
You said that's for the entire year, right?
yes.
Any questions? Motion?
Motion.
Archer, second?
Second.
Salisbury?
Archer,
Yes.
Stottsbury,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes. That it?
That's it.
Dan, back to you.
All right. Personnel matters, you'll see a number of things there. A lot of these are substitutes in a variety of classifications. However, we did post our 4-hour custodial position as we indicated that we would. And we had several bid on that, but Danny Hickman was the most senior. So Danny will be awarded that 4-hour custodial position starting in August. His responsibility will be taking care of the admin office, and then from there, right over to the elementary, picking up the duties that Donna Ray had. Donna used to be a 4-hour at the elementary and 4-hour here with the additional facility and a lot of things that we feel like need to be done. She'll be here full-time. So Danny will be elementary, middle school, and the admin office starting August. We're excited about that.
So how's he doing that? Between
He'll do it after his route.
in the evening?
And then you'll see at the bottom, we do have a resignation of high school football for Mike Leggett, but he's also added under the volunteer list. See a few changes there.
Is that volunteer, is that to get it straight from last time?
No, he's just changing roles.
Volunteer.
Any other questions? Motion?
Motion.
Archer, Salisbury?
Archer,
Yes.
Stottsbury,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes.
In some business matters, most all of which are very routine, including our authorizing the superintendent and treasurer to enter into a contract and partnership, once again, with Noble County Commissioners and Noble County Sheriff's Office for a school resource officer position. I will say along those lines, kind of out of order, but we do plan on making some additions to our safety team. So we're excited about that opportunity. We also have among the ordinary, we have the advertised for sale of district assets from the current all weight room inventory. That's not an auction. It's a sale. We've priced things, whether it be by pound or by bench or by whatever. So it's not good. There's just too many items. It's too chaotic to have a weight room sale and try to auction off every 10-pound weight or whatever it is somebody's looking for. So people can come in and
When is that?
it's starting ASAP, but you're not going to be able to pick up until we're ready to move into the new one. So somebody can stop by and say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z.
So that's online?
I have to tell you, I don't know that it's online. I actually just sent the inventory list and pricing list to Danielle today while I was driving.
I'm trying to open it and
Yeah, it was just
something's wrong
important
with
that
the
we
link.
did that now because the sale will probably take place between now and when we meet next. We've priced everything. You know, typically, if you go to a store and you want to buy a weight, it's typically $1 a pound. A lot of our stuff priced 50 cents a pound. There's some good stuff. No, either one or you don't. Okay.
All right, motion?
Motion.
Carpenter, second. Stotsberry.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Stottsberry,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes.
And the last item of business, obviously, this is a new requirement, but given the fact that we are planning to offer some type of remote learning in the future, we have to pass a resolution that we do intend to provide remote learning options for students in the 2021 school year. Then there's a form that you see attached there that we have to submit to the state. This is very similar to when we approved Blizzard bags and we had, we could be authorized up to 3 days. This is really giving some of the flexibility to deal with attendance and how we do that. So we'll be submitting that.
Push.
Stotsberry, second.
Second.
Carpenter.
Stottsberry,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along, the informational items attached there for your review are the policy for face masks or face coverings, which is required. Now, understand, our policy provider is the Ohio School Boards Association. They're still working on theirs. They haven't released a sample policy, so we're anxious to get that. This was just, when I reached out, when this was a requirement, I began reaching out to people, and Evelyn Wagner, that represents our district in legal issues, this was their first one that they were doing, not only for us, but for other districts. So we're going to probably have several choices to look at. There's a lot of flexibility there. We've added a few things that I shared with you today about bus transportation, when distancing is not possible. But there are some exemptions that you will see there, and those exemptions are, covered under law as well. I will tell you, as we talk about face cover, we haven't talked a lot about immunity and liability. And so House Bill 606 is waiting there when people come back from recess. That kind of provides immunity to businesses, industry, schools, athletic venues, etc. It has not passed yet. So to sit here and, not that I'm indicating that anybody is, but to sit here and disregard the use or the requirement to wear masks would certainly not put us in a very good position. One of the things that does put us in a good position is the choice we're providing for families to choose remote or face-to-face learning. So I think we're really positioned well, but we think this policy, so far, I want to continue to review it. This is the first one. This is the first one we reviewed. I've not seen other versions of this. So I think, again, even though we always feel like we need to move fast, I think we have some time to kind of look over this. And I'm sure this is one that you're going to want to take time to look at, maybe provide some comments. But just keep in mind that our attorney drafted this, and he does note numerous exceptions. So I feel pretty comfortable about it. I will tell you, somebody asked me today, well, what if I refuse to wear a mask? Then you have the choice to go remotely.
How do you enforce a place?
I mean, that's the short answer is the best you can.
Yeah.
Let's just make it. We never had to do it before.
Yeah.
But it seems like the clear option is if your wants and needs extend beyond trying to care for others and make others feel comfortable, and you just want to, then you probably face-to-face is probably not the right option for you. Right? I mean, you have choices.
Yeah.
So if you want face-to-face, we're going to need you to try to cooperate with us here. I mean, we laugh. I think that's about as respectful as we can make it, If you tell me that I have to wear a mask when I go to Walmart, I have a choice not to go to Walmart.
Yep.
Not enforcing that really kind of puts us in a situation that I don't think you want me to allow us to be in.
Yep.
So it's not me. I'm not insensitive to the fact that people have strong opinions about the mask, but I know when you're running a public institute, we just can't have disregard for that. And so that's kind of where our policy is going to be. It's all about choice. and we're willing to meet you in a number of different places, but you're gonna be here. You're not gonna likely have to wear it all the time. You're gonna have to wear it when distancing, and those things aren't possible, and we're gonna try to teach you, respectful and responsible ways to do that. So I think there's a lot of lessons there, just trying to take care of other people. So that's where we are. Construction updates, I'll go to that next. Really, we're moving pretty well. I mean, we had some bad weather on the playground. I hope you get a chance, maybe even tonight before it gets dark, to go over there. I was in Columbus this morning. I'm not sure if asphalt was put down today or not, but it's scheduled to be put down anytime. It's not, is it?
Tomorrow. I just talked to.
Yeah. So that's coming along. We anticipate that the project's on schedule. We had issues on the addition, not issues. The issue was, it was just, we had probably about 50% of the masons that we expected to have on the block bank, but I think they're moving well there now.
At the cafeterias, are they on time?
Yeah, good. I mean, all the equipment seems to be arriving on time. That was our biggest concern, was the availability of restaurant equipment. And that's all, so far, it's arrived. What we were expecting at certain dates has all arrived. The athletic report is there for your review. Typically, and I would really like to do this, is maybe in August, have Eric come in and talk to us. I think it's good to have him in.
It's good information.
Yeah,
I appreciate him doing this.
Yeah, so take the opportunity to look over that, and let's have him in for discussion. I will tell you that athletic revenues, best case scenario, we're a break even. Transportation alone, and I'm not even looking at the sheet, so I may be off a little bit, but I can tell you that we've budgeted for transportation next year, I believe about $35,000 or $38,000.
You'll see a $13,000 increase.
Yeah, and we've relied heavily upon past sales. I think our community has enjoyed past sales, but right now we can't even begin selling passes because we don't know what sports we're offering this fall.
That was a question a couple people asked me, they will sell passes this year.
So,
We're selling their refunds.
well, I'll tell you, my role on the OHSA has been interesting. People are just, again, they're dying for answers, and they want some direction. It's really been frustrating, and we want to help people, and there's just not enough answers out there. So, I can say, we can play football in the fall. There's so many variables to that. We still have no idea if that will be limited capacity. I'm sure that it would be. Then if we're not permitted to play in the fall, then are we looking at a change of season? There's so many variables out there. We can really only take one step at a time. So the revenue side of this is really going to be sketchy. We did have some discussions in Columbus today, and I'll be happy to get with my guy that filmed graduation, and I made him a promise that day, and we will have a lot of local decision-making on live streaming owned events, and possibly recouping some revenue, especially if we have a reduced capacity. That's not Friday night football. That's not been permitted because Spectrum owned Friday nights. So we're looking at some options to try to help not just us, but people throughout the state. I talked to Caleb midday graduation. I thought, I can only let 20% of the people in, and I got grandma and grandpa that want to watch this. We need to provide that. So everybody that did our meeting today was very supportive of that, and that need exists throughout the state. So I think that's going to be a positive thing, and maybe a way to recoup some revenue. But I wanted to go ahead and get this on there, and then we'll bring Eric in August.
So is there a percentage per sport based of how the expenditures are applied? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I can answer that question. It's
Yeah,
never where we just say, hey, I'm going to give you 2,500.
and there's not a right or wrong.
It's kind of a zero-based budget.
Okay.
One of the things I really think that need to be improved, and again, it's when I say improved, I'm not saying that as a slight to anybody. Guy and I've had this conversation for 7 years. The way this really should flow is I should meet with as athletic director, I should meet with our coaches. End of the year, I should have an evaluation, a feedback opportunity, and during that time, the coach should share with me what my needs are for the following year. And then when I have that cumulative list, then I'll have to sit down with my boosters officers and say, okay, let's look at the list in total. What can I afford out of my budget? What are you willing to do out of your budget? And what's left over is a gap. Then you go back to the coach. Here's what I'm able to do for you. Here's what the boosters are able to do for you. Here's the gap. How do you want to attack it? And you have them give you a priority list. And then everybody knows up front what we're shooting for. That eliminates this, I'm going to go ask for this. I never indicated at my end of the season meeting that I needed this, but all of a sudden, well, I'd like to do this, so I'm going to go to the meeting and see what happens.
Things change.
Yeah.
Things change.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really critical, and not trying to control anybody, but I think the athletic boosters and the AD have to work together on a budget. I don't think, personally, God makes me. Personally, a boosters group should not try to work with 9, 10, and 11 different head coaches. The head coaches ought to work through the AD works with the booster. Now that way we can all I think it's better for the boosters to know, hey, this is the budget I need for those things in which I've committed to. And then the athletic department knows, hey, this is the budget and you know what? Then the coach and their kids know this is the gap that's left. Where does that fall on the priority list? Do we just want to forget about it, or we want to do some fundraising and do some things to make it happen? It's really, I'll give you an example. I know it's not popular, but it worked best for me when the boosters were responsible for all the calls. I wasn't going to them for basketballs, footballs, helmets. They knew this is the uniform rotation. We buy uniforms. We buy every sport uniforms once every 4 years. So every kid in the sport has a new uniform sometime in their high school career. We know about what those costs are. So the boosters was able to really establish a consistent budget. There wasn't a lot of fluctuation. And this year I need 60,000. Next year I need 10. They knew they could plan for what sports were coming up and when. And then the district or the athletic department was responsible for all the necessities. Because quite frankly, a uniform every 4 years is not a necessity, it's a luxury. And then the district was responsible for the helmets, the shoulder pads, the balls, the things you can't play the game without. When we got those responsibilities outlined, things became so much clearer. So I think it's been good. The thing that impacts our budget here, and again, I'm taking Eric's, you're not in the league. Your travel is going to go up. You think about all these schools are talking about, we're only going to play league games. Yeah, so that's not really out there. It's just, because I hear some colleges are only playing them. But, we're going to continue to try, but there's just not that many options. You look, Warren Local jumps in the ECOL, and now, that league's going to be pretty much defunct because Zanesville's left, Meadowbrook's left, Cambridge is leaving, New Philly or Dover's leaving. Like now they jumped into this is their first year playing, and by year 2 or 3. So having that competition to play locally or consistently is it's an issue for us.
I got a question. The game workers, 29 cents, that's a
You want me to explain that?
Sure, thank goodness. I got nothing. They didn't do a very good job.
It's average.
So what happens is our workers' comp premium comes due once a year. And it is actually not in the year that we had, this year we didn't have any game workers, but the workers' comp premiums became due afterwards. And it's a percentage of their income. So it's like 0.072359. I don't know what the rest of it is, but of what they got paid. So it just so happens that that's the amount of workers' comp that was paid in our audit period for game workers, even though there was no salary paid.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. You have an explanation for that's phenomenal.
I'm sorry.
Well, you're the best, Trenda.
I owe you 29 cents for the 5 ball games.
That's a split between that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. You can get Adam his share. So just, take some time to look over that. Same way with the transportation report. I just knew we had this. This is typically when we do these, but I also knew we were gonna have a crowd. I knew the back to school. So I'd like for Chris to come.
A ton of information to digest.
Yeah, and Chris has been amazing. Too, the whole department's just done a fantastic job. I'm just really pleased with what's happened there, and the whole department's really doing some great work. So we'll plan on having both Eric and Chris with us in August. And then our August meeting, you'll have it before then, but we'll obviously have more information to you about the back to school plan. Two. Yeah, possibly a third, but two.
What?
Guy asked a question about the bus purchase plan. I told him we're set for 2 and possibly.
Forecast is planning on 2, and then we're gonna wait and see what happens in, with our settlement, and then we'll make a decision in December whether there will be a third.
Good. Couple other things I forgot to mention under construction. Just today, I know we've talked about it. We are starting the site feasibility study probably next week, looking at multiple areas on our campus and what we might be able to put where in regards to future planning. And then I'm probably no later than August, you'll have it before, we'll have a proposal on what our phase 4 renovations, finishing off the high school, front hall, auditorium, LED lighting retrofit throughout the elementary, middle school. So that's what we identified in phase 4. The numbers I've seen thus far look very good.
Any update on the farm stuff?
No, the tractor has been taken care of, but I have not heard a definite delivery date. They really felt like that tractor would be available at another dealer. We might be able to get it quicker. And then Matt and Eric are working on a list of other priority equipment that they need, and I've got another couple sponsors lined up. I just need to get some information.
I don't know, I was impressed up there the other day.
With that?
I was impressed up there the other day. All the kids.
Oh, yeah.
People.
Oh my, the community support, the people that were just ecstatic to be there.
Yeah.
But no, hey, when I was that old, you couldn't find kids.
How many bells you throw, Dan?
Huh?
How many bells you throw?
Well, I tell you what, it's interesting you should say that, because I had a great time heckling the kids. Like, I thought farming was tough. Like I would throw a bale and there were so many people.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge was walking to get to the next one, because it might be 20 people, there would be 20 people waiting. Like so you'd throw one and it was like playing, what's that game? The
So
Indian
my
one.
dad got something, he said, now that's the way you buy square bales, because all the kids just piled on the trailer.
You know what though, it was just, man, the kids were excited, but I would just be heckling. I'm saying, like, I thought you guys said farming was hard. I can't even get to a bale to throw it. Like, what, they said, Mr. Ledwell, there's typically not this many people here. I said, well, then we need to have more friends. When I bail, hey, look at me.
You should have seen the looks we got when people would come into the office and looking for this person or the other person, and our response was, they're in the hayfield. They're like, they're what? Yeah, over there in our hayfield.
It was
I got there at the end, and I'll tell you what, they was getting there. Almost 900 square miles.
So, now I had not probably put up hay to any extent, probably 25 or more years. But I can tell you as much as I can remember, that was the thickest stuff I've ever seen in my life. Like, just keeping a baler from plugging was a job, so. It was
That's good, I'm impressed.
those guys had, you know what, our 2 teachers, kids, Just great. It was a lot of fun.
All right, that it?
Mhm.
All right, moving on. I'll now accept the motion to enter into executive session to consider matters required to be kept confidential. A federal law, regulation, state statute, details relative to the security arrangements, emergency response protocols for a public body or public office. If disclosure of the matters is discussed, could reasonably be expected to jeopardize the security of the public body or public office. Motion.
Motion.
McElroy, second.
Second.
Archer.
McElroy,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Stottsbury.
Yeah.
McKee.
Yes. 8:03.
We did,